garbage, he ain't got no money.
Mine's in the car.
Good morning, my name is Barry Boyd. This morning I'm going to talk to you about changes that should be made to the Navy tuition assistance policy. By show of hands, who has received military orders before? In those military orders, the Navy encourages you to get a college degree. Despite encouraging you to get your college degree, the Navy has its own roadblocks in the Navy tuition assistance policy. Today we're going to talk about those roadblocks in the Navy tuition assistance policy and some changes that could be made to actually better the policy. Key points that we're going to discuss is how much tuition assistance is actually paid out, what type of education are those dollars actually buying, and we're also going to talk about the difference between tuition assistance in the Air Force, in the Marines, in the Army, and the Navy. I myself have utilized tuition assistance for the past 3 years. I've been in the military for over 10 years. Each year that I've utilized tuition assistance, I max out my benefits at the semester hour cap, not at the $4,000 limit that is set by the Navy. We're going to go over some quick numbers to kind of help you grasp the big picture. In 2013, the Navy paid out $84 million in tuition assistance. Today, we actually have 326,000 members in the United States Navy. So just by taking those numbers, you can come up with roughly $260 for each service member goes towards Navy tuition assistance per a fiscal year. If every service member actually utilized their full benefits, then that number would be a lot greater. It would come out to total $1.3 billion with a B, which is much greater than $84 million. But as you can see, a lot smaller in the grand scheme of things. The the military's budget request for 2014 was $526 billion. The Navy is allocated 155.8 of that $526 billion. Only 84 million of that went to helping you get your degree. I did a comparison of a military-friendly university, Brenau University, which is actually located on base in Kings Bay, Georgia, versus the University of Florida, the school I attend right now. Key things I wanted to point out is the cost of tuition at Brenau University versus the University of Florida. In-state tuition is $208 at the University of Florida, regardless if you're in the military or not. Brenau, which is a private university, is $382 to $930, but it's capped at $250 for service members. These two schools, even though the costs for a military member are somewhat similar, they rank much differently when it comes to the type of education that you actually receive based on U.S. News. U.S. News did not rank Brenau against the other colleges in America nationally, but they did rank UF at 48. The competitors nationally include Harvard and Yale. Brenau was ranked 43 just in the Southeast region alone. That's a huge contrast in the quality of university that you're going to based on U.S. News. But again, the tuition cost is somewhat similar. The key thing I want to point out is that the Navy actually will pay the full $250 that Renal is requesting from the service member to attend their school, but they only will pay $149 that a service member requests that attends the University of Florida. Another thing I want to point out is the differences between the branches. So the Air Force and the Marines pay 100% of the $250 a credit hour with a $4,500 cap limit every fiscal year for college, with no cap limit on the number of semester hours that you're allowed. The Navy has similar restrictions when it comes to the amount of money they will pay for tuition and credit hours, but they limit that at $4,000 with a 16 credit hour cap limit. The Army, which was very similar to the Air Force and the Marines previously, caps out at $4,500, but just implemented the 16-hour cap rule as well. I want to point this out specifically because at $149 a credit hour, a student at the University of Florida will only receive that for 16 credit hours, which will roughly put them at $2,400 of the allotted $4,000 that each service member is supposed to get. If they were in the Air Force or Marines, then they would be able to use unlimited money up until that $4,500 limit. But in the Navy, you can't. After researching, the Navy should make these changes at least to put them in line with the other branches of the military. They should at least increase the cap or tuition hours allowed a fiscal year. By doing this, it will put us in line with the Air Force or the Marines in regards to you can utilize that $4,000 that they set aside for Navy tuition assistance. They also, if they don't do this, then at least they should allow students to utilize the full $250 of credit hour. So if you saw on a previous slide I showed you, they only would pay for $149 of my tuition at UF, they should jump that number up to $250. And they also should allow increased cap limits for service members with more time served. So I myself been in 10 years and I haven't utilized my benefits for 7 years. There should be some kind of credit I deserve to allow me to use tuition assistance despite that 16 credit hour cap. In conclusion, we talked about tuition assistance and how it's paid out, how it compares to other colleges, and how it compares to other branches. Are there any questions? Yes.
Are there any types of waivers that you can get for the amount of credit hours that you receive?
Good question. There are waivers, but they typically don't come out until it gets towards the end of the fiscal year. So September time frame is when you see those waivers, but that does not coincide with the actual school year because classes normally start at the end of August. With classes start at the end of August, then you won't be able to get your tuition assistance approved because the tuition assistance is required to be approved before the class starts. So if the waiver comes out in September, you won't be able to get your tuition assistance approved for a class that started at the end of August. And it's only open from September to October. Once the new fiscal year starts, they take away the waivers and you no longer will have the ability to submit the waiver to exceed the cap. Any other questions? Thank you for your time today. I do intend on starting something with the Navy College at Kings Bay to try to get a petition going, at least to send it up to our higher-ups, which would be the CNO, or possibly a congressman, to voice the opinion on this matter. Because obviously the money appropriated is not getting evenly distributed throughout the different branches of the military. Thank you again for your time.
You were at 8 minutes when you asked for questions.